one of the biggest credibility hits that you can take is when you choose non-words to bridge all of our sentences together, and sometimes we feel like we have so much to say that we have to get to it really quickly and to take time to take a break in between those sentences. Well, basically, what you're doing is killing time by pausing. So what we tend to do is while we're thinking, we fill in with words that either aren't words or are filler words.
Good beat.
That's everyone. We are also guilty of using non-words to fill in while we're thinking. Silence, for some reason, becomes really uncomfortable to us. Oftentimes, people think if we pause, that silence is going to be awkward for our listener. There is power in the pause. Think about some of the best performers you've ever seen, a comedian, a speaker, someone who had just a really big impact value. And now think about how they use the pause. Do you ever hear many non-words from someone who really has that impact value? Very, very seldom. Comedians are the best at it. They know exactly how and when to pause and for how long to create the punchline that knocks you off your feet. It doesn't come naturally to anyone. It is in our nature to avoid silence at all costs. Whether we're thinking, trying to figure out what to say next, or simply just communicating and letting silence be one of our fears, we fill everything in. Fill it with phrases and sounds and words that aren't words or words that are words to bridge it all together. I'm going to push you in this next hour to really value the power behind the pause. There are so many benefits that spring off from pausing, not just in how the structure of your message being more clear and concise. That's one of them, but you'll find that there are some others as well that are trickle-down effect simply by taking time to pause. Every time you're tempted to say a non-word or a filler phrase, I'm going to urge you for the next hour to just pause. No matter how long it takes, no matter how awkward it feels, say nothing until you're ready to start the next sentence. Here are some of the great benefits of pausing. These are some of my favorites when you see how much they marry together. First things first, it helps you stay on track. When there's constant noise happening with the filler phrases and the non-words, your brain simply doesn't have time to strategically think about what you want to say next. You need that break to plan what the next sentence is that comes out of your mouth. All you need is a second or two. It doesn't need to be 5 or 8 seconds. That could get long and awkward. You just need a second or two, and it helps you stay on track and be very purposeful about what you want to say next. You'll be able to keep your thoughts gathered. You'll be more clear and concise with your listener. I always say commit to the period at the end of the sentence. Anticipate it, picture it in bold red, and commit to it. When there's a period, 3-second pause. And during that pause, be thinking about what you want to say next to have the most impact and the most influence in your message. Here's what's great. Your listener needs a break too. When we are constantly filling in with filler words, I already gave you the bad demo. I'll spare you another one. When we're constantly filling in, your listener gets exhausted. Have you noticed that people start checking out? Like, how do I keep them reeled in? There must be something I can do to really pull them into my message. Part of the reason they're checking out is they can't keep up for that long without a break. So while you're thinking about what you get to say next, perk number 1, your listener has a chance to absorb what you've just said and is ready to hear the next sentence. They'll stay more engaged because there's an anticipatory element in the pause. What's she going to say next? I've had a second to absorb what she just said. What's coming next? They need it. You will rarely get feedback from your listeners that says, you paused too long. You'll never get it. They'll take advantage of that break that you're giving them to absorb what you've just said. They want it, they need it. Pausing is one of the key skills to being concise and articulate. When you can replace that noise that happens in between sentences, people will start telling you that you are really spot on, really polished, very articulate, really succinct. That's the kind of feedback you'll get when you start pausing. The key is biting the tongue long enough to not let those phrases creep in to muddle up your message. Pair up with someone near you. Find a partner. I'm going to give you an exercise to practice this. Megan, would you play along? I think we have an odd number.
Sure.
Here's the exercise. Think only about pausing while we do this. Nothing else. No gestures, no posture, just pausing. You'll each get to play the role of speaker and listener. As the speaker, topic of your choice, and make it an intention to pause at the end of the sentence. No don't start your sentence with so, that's a big one. So I love vacation. So I love to watch movies. Any of those fillers that are not necessary, eliminate them. In between your sentences, pause for 3 seconds before you start the next sentence. Listeners, you are their coach. Count to 3. Listen if they're pausing. See how many non-words creep in or if they get quickly eliminated. And then I'll give you about 30 seconds to coach each other. We'll switch roles and redo it again, switching the role of listener and speaker. Clear enough?
How long?
All right. I'll give you about a minute to interact, and then about 30 seconds to provide feedback before we switch roles. Topic of your choice. All right, does everyone have a partner? All right, 1 minute. Topic of your choice, focusing on the pause and eliminating non-words. Here we go. You want to go first? As I said, I studied in Minneapolis, and I was asked by her to transport to Chicago. The reason I was asked to transfer
It's part of the financial transformation by this
why I transferred to Chicago. And then
I go speak at conferences in I believe that's where I feel like
Because I got most of my clients, this is what I moved here for. Fortunately, the other client turned out to be
these days,
clients that really serving for 11 years.
I'm second year.
Fast forward now 13 years, and
I find myself in front of
$1,000 in the last 9 years. And
my current client,
my son is 9 years.
all right, take 30 seconds as the listeners give your speaker feedback.
Couple hands.
I was hard.
That's my process. Other than that, it's just one long thought.
Right.
It's unusual to not use a lot of filler and not have to pause. You don't use a lot of filler. You just have to take more of a purposeful.
Which was not necessary to be beaten, but something
Wrapping up that feedback.
Especially when you start to get excited. Then you
that's what it is. You don't know how
feel it.
Yes.
All right, let's switch roles. Or if, Megan, if you want to give Lisa another go at it to try it again, that's fine. All right, here we go. Switching roles, 1 minute. Topic of your choice.
I have 2 boys. Family's girls, so that was a change. Jack is my oldest. It was part of the prenup celebration with my husband that was being John, the third. I agreed to call Jack, and now I about his life. Jack is 19, and he's at Georgetown, so I know you're not from DC.
No, I'm not.
He's in his second year at Georgetown, and he loves it.
so
It's
big and so
really
successful.
good for him.
One thing
Enjoy
I
to
also
see him
wonder is how it happened.
for Thanksgiving
Because
and
that
how
must
well
be
he's
great for
doing.
And wrap up your sentence or thought.
Younger and basketball, golf player,
And listeners, 30 seconds of feedback for the speaker on
Yeah,
pause.
Yeah.
So in terms of, I think you have.
I just say that. I noticed, I noticed, yeah, one or two, but yeah.
It's
Like,
awareness,
and-
right, it's just awareness.
So you would
Giving
say I
yourself
would
the
think
longer
about it
pause
until
will help you think to yourself.
I do
You can use, and if you're listening to
Start a
thoughts
sentence
together,
together.
start
Yeah.
don't start in the sentence.
Yes.
Okay.
All right, wrapping up your feedback, and then we'll meet back together in
Use it there.
And I'm back to it.
Pause, nod,
Tend to confuse.
and when I have dessert,
And I
and
think
when I
what
have
the
less
feedback
wine,
you gave me, I
just
can turn
give
it
yourself,
around and say,
there's
feet
that
don't
All right, let's
seconds
meet back.
to get your head back.
And just
Yeah.
How does pausing feel?
unnatural,
When it's a new skill that you're practicing, it can feel a little bit like see, spot, run. Short sentences that end, and it feels orchestrated. Know that we're really going to push you on practicing it. As it becomes habit, your natural style will start to creep back in, and it will marry with your authenticity to become very natural to you. Two things about the pause. First of all, the ums and uhs are really, really common, and is a filler word that gets used a lot. Part of the pause lesson here too is to break up two sentences with a period instead of stringing them together with an and. What we tend to do is we'll talk and we'll finish a sentence or thought where it should be a period, we'll end and we'll continue it on with a new listener, and now it's gotten really, really long. So be aware of the and in there that strings together what should be two sentences, replace it with a period. Was that did that resonate with you? Yes, and know too that this will not feel natural at first. It will feel uncomfortable, and the silence will make you feel awkward. Work through that awkward element, knowing that it's not awkward to your listener. Did any of you receive feedback, wow, that was really choppy and awkward?
Actually, on the contrary, I mean, I was trying to pause deliberately, and the feedback I received was, that seemed very natural.
There you go.
It's
There you
surprising
go.
to hear
It
that.
was not overdone at all. I mean, probably had this impression.
And I was like struggling, like, maybe I'm being too, maybe come across artificial, because you're taking those pauses.
Yes,
But I got the exact opposite feedback.
yes.
I was worried too, that was kind of like, I felt low energy going so slow.
Now, here's a key point. Pausing does not mean speak slowly. It just means take a break in between your sentences. We would encourage you to maintain your conversational tone. Just replace the filler with a pause.
I feel
A lot
like-
of times, I'm sorry, go ahead,
I
KK.
feel like you have more control over the conversation,
Yes,
and it's extremely uncomfortable. But I think that's the practice we need. Actually, I need to just be comfortable with those pauses and be more articulate.
yes,
Have better quality conversation.
Yes.
More than anything else.
that is one of the biggest takeaways every time we do this workshop. I feel more in control. I feel more thoughtful about what's coming out of my mouth. I feel like I'm more succinct and I'm able to gather my thoughts more easily. It's just a 1 or 2 second pause that allows you to do that. And that doesn't mean we have to speak slowly, pause. And it doesn't mean we have to speak choppily, pause. It just means to have a conversation with someone, giving them a break at the end of your sentence, pause. Something that really helps is connecting with people's eyes. This afternoon, Mary Beth is going to do a whole module on eye connection, how important it is in helping to build that bond and that connection. It also helps you to pause. Now, if I were staying with you, Sean, connecting with your eyes, if I stay with you too long because I'm trailing all of my sentences together, and so this is going to start to feel super awkward. But if I reach the period at the end of my sentence, which frees me up to go find a new set of eyes, now there's a succinctness that's happening. Mary Beth will teach you that today. Know that using your eye connection skill will help you keep your sentence shorter, find the period, move on to a new set of eyes. Pausing is also really golden because it gives us the chance to do something that is so critical in terms of coming across confident, assertive, and polished. It drives our volume. Here's how. If I am constantly talking and I never take a chance to pause, I absolutely have no opportunity to take a breath. And what happens to my volume at the end of my sentences is I switch to training. Now watch the difference. I finish a sentence or thought with Srini, I find the period at the end of my sentence. I have now refueled. I've got plenty of fuel to project and have volume as I connect with Pierre, finding the period at the end of my sentence. It gives you the chance to fuel up. Air is your fuel for volume. It is also your fuel for inflection. Just by taking time to pause, you're also allowing yourself to fill the tank. There is not one person in the room today who I would not have coached to raise volume at least 2 or 3 levels. Let's talk about those levels. Give you a gauge. How loud should I be? We put it on a scale of 1 to 10. 1 to 3, inaudible, avoid it. 9 to 10, you're shouting, starts to get to be a little bit much, avoid it. One-on-one, Mary Beth and I in the coaching room will use about a 4. Anything you've experienced with Mary Beth this morning, we hover around a 4. 2 plus, up to a group about this size, I'm trying to stay about a 5, 6. This volume that you hear me choosing, I would define as a 5, 6. Now, if this room was full and I had 15 plus, I would bump that to a 7, 8. This is about a 7, 8, what I'm doing right now. This would be a bit much for a group this size, would you agree? If this room was full, it would not be too much. We use this triangle, use this as your guide to determine how loud you should be. What you'll learn here is what a 5, 6 feels like coming out of your diaphragm and your mouth. Keep in mind, you are closest to the source. Chances are when we coach you to go up to a 5, 6, it's going to feel really loud to you. And the reason of that is your ears are right here by your mouth. You're hearing it louder than anyone else in the room. It has to travel, absorb bodies and things and space. It's never that loud when it actually reaches you. We'll coach you to help you have an awareness of what 5, 6 feels like. That's where we'll focus today. Keep in mind, one-on-one, you'd bring it down. Larger groups, you'd bring it up.
How about on the phone? We're talking about phone conversations, and a lot of it's in conference calls.
I go about a 4
She does
as a one-on-one. Now you have some technology that's absorbing some of that. Probably be safe to bump it to a 5, just to be safe, to make sure you're projecting through that technology the way that you want to do that. Conference calls, treat it with extra energy to make sure that that volume is projecting out to all of the listeners.
Like a headset makes a big difference too versus speakerphone. I feel like it doesn't carry as, depending on how close you are to it, but like if you're in your office one-on-one,
Yes,
you know.
yes. Keep in mind, all of your air comes from the center of your body. Slouch in your chair for me if you would. Just sit back and slouch if you're not already there. Some of us are. We choose that sometimes. All right. Say with me together, when I do this gesture, I am speaking on a little air, just for something to say.
Eyes.
I'm speaking on somewhere.
All right, now, home base. Shoulders are back. You've just opened up that diaphragm that is your source of air. Now, take a breath on the gesture and say, I am speaking on more air.
I'm speaking on
more air.
Hear the difference? All right, now do me a favor. Stand up. Let's open it up even more. Take a deep breath before we say it. Deep breath on my gesture. I am speaking on a lot of air. Here's the deep breath.
I'm speaking on more air.
See how powerful the air source is? Go ahead and have a seat. Without the pause, you won't have the opportunity to get air into the diaphragm. If anything, you might take a very short little puff of air just to get you through to the next onward, and then we're operating just from the chest. Pause long enough to fuel the diaphragm. The volume and the inflection that are going to follow that breath have strength and power behind it. You will come across more confident, more engaging, more passionate, simply because you've got the fuel driving the volume, driving the inflection. It's difficult to inflect. We talked this morning about gesture and how the inflection really changes the message. It's really difficult to inflect when you're at the end of your air source and you're starting to run out of air. The only thing that our body does is it will go to a very safe zone tonally, where the least energy is required to get the most words out. Refuel so that you've got power to project and power to inflect. Let's give it a try. Topic of your choice, work-related, something you're passionate about. For this taping, we are only going to focus on pause, volume, and inflection. Put the other ones on a shelf for now. We're just going to focus on projection. Pausing, eliminate the non-word. In the pause, fuel up. Questions? Ready to try it? I'll take you last.
Perfect.
All right. We're talking about volume and inflection. Pausing to breathe deep in between your sentences. You'll catch up. The goal here is to get rid of non-words. So all of those. All right. Let's try this on for size. This time I really will use the group card. Okay, 1 minute, same drill. I'll interactively coach from behind the camera. Topic of your choice. The focus is the pause, adding in some volume and inflection. Who's first?
I'll volunteer.
I love a volunteer.
One of the reasons I moved to Chicago was to serve a client, Heitman. It's a real estate investment advisor, and I transferred here, and after 2 years, I was asked to come out and go to.
All right, 2 ands that should have been periods. All right, I'm going to enlist the
I'm
group.
really bad at this.
I'm going to enlist the group. Help me coach. If you catch a non-word,
Put a finger in for something.
we'll give a knock on the table. We'll give a knock on the table.
Because
All
I
right?
don't hear it. Yeah.
That's the key. This
I
is the
can
biggest
stop the
one
slows,
where we
but then-
increase awareness.
Okay.
We do not realize how quickly we jump to the next sentence and how many times we fill or bridge them with something that doesn't need to be there. This is the tough one, but bear with us and go with it. Help me coach. Whenever we hear one, let's give her a signal.
Well, after working on them for only 2 years, I was asked to go on to another client, totally different industry. Huge disappointment. But fast forward, 11 years after serving that client, I was asked to go back on Heitman.
Did you catch the
Yeah.
All right, give me that sentence one more time.
So fast forward, after 11 years.
Try that again without the so. Fast forward.
Fast forward, after 11 years, I actually went back onto Heitman as a partner versus a manager. I took that client from around $250,000 in fees to over $4 million in fees over the past 8 years. I took the remove.
Nice.
Yeah.
Feel the difference?
For me-
You could pause even longer in between your
Yeah.
sentences. You're working on getting rid of the non-words. Now lengthen that pause out even longer. This is good. All right, who's next? Be aware of words also that serve no purpose in the sentence. And that's when I actually made a transition, and basically it was time to make a change. So I actually, basically, another filler phrase. With that being said, that's another one. With that being said, all of those type of things serve no purpose. Be aware of those as well. All right, KK.
Right, good morning, everyone. I'm going to be talking about my client, Glazers, and Deloitte's footprint there for the last 2 or 3 years. I started with Glazers three years ago in December. They are about $4 billion alcohol distributor. They are the third largest alcohol distributor in the United States. When we first started with them, we won an engagement about $6.5 million.
How's he doing on his pause? Really nice,
Yeah.
really concise.
Yeah.
Now let's push it. In that pause, breathe deeper. Let's hear that volume come up 2 levels.
Okay. When we first started with Glazers,
Good catch, good catch.
our engagement was about $6.5 million worth of a blueprint project for leading to an SAP implementation. Following that, we won the implementation phase of the project, which was about $19 million.
I
Today-
like what I'm seeing. Volume and some inflection. One more sentence. Let's really hear the difference when you pour more energy behind your words. Big deep breath.
Today, at Glazers, we have done about $42 million in the past 2.5 years. And our
Mix that and. New sentence.
we've done $42 million over the past 3 years. Our footprint has grown beyond technology. We do a lot of S&O work now, which is strategy and operations work. We also have an ERS engagement
You
there.
caught that at the end.
Yes.
You're going to like what you see and hear when the volume came up. What happened? Did you hear the difference?
Facial expression too.
Ah, yes, that just stirred more energy in general. Thank you very much. Round of applause. Who's next? May as well just go around the table, right?
Yeah.
Pierre.
We are disciplined.
You are. I like structure. Relax those hands at your side and home base.
So one of my
Ooh, we're gonna start right off getting rid of that so. One of mine.
largest clients nowadays is actually based in Chicago.
Good catch on the actually. Start from the top, no so.
And
Start from the top.
I come to Chicago very often to visit this client. I enjoy it a lot because Chicago is memories to me, and I love the practice here. I enjoy working with the people. I enjoy spending time in the city as well. So serving this client.
All right, Pierre, you are doing a fantastic job getting rid of the non-words. After those first 2 catches, so far none. I need volume. Up 3 levels. I would say right now you're around a 2, maybe 3. I want you at a 5 or a 6.
Okay.
Fuel it with breath and really project. Relax your hands.
Okay. Another good thing about this client is that their
Even louder, Pierre.
main operations around the world are actually, guess where? In France. So it's a perfect client for me.
All right, focusing back on your non-words, actually and so are creeping in. Just find that period, commit to it.
I'm working with them on a project right now. It should be a large project. It should take us to do a lot of work in France as well as in Chicago. So that should be a very interesting project, not only because the topic is interesting.
All right, we're losing ground.
Yeah.
So that should be, and not only. Those are just periods. Give me 2 full sentences as loud as you can with a strong pause at the end of each.
Serving these clients is actually sometimes a challenge. The reason for that is they have 2, I would say, I'm quoting my, sorry. The reason for that.
Oh, try that again.
The reason
I
for
want to
that-
catch the change. Start from the top, 2 sentences, long pause in between.
Okay. Serving these clients is sometimes a challenge. The reason for that is they have 2 teams, one in Chicago and another one in Paris. Making the 2 work together.
There you go. There you go. The volume is going to be huge for you. You have a very gentle tone to your voice. You're going to have to dig really deep to project. We'll tell you for the rest of today, if you get too loud, you won't. Go for it. Just really, really go for it on volume. Thank you very much.
You put the order?
Let's may as well. It's working.
So continuing with the purpose of why I
Give
wanted
me
to.
1 second. I didn't catch you on tape. Were you jumping right in?
I was.
You go for it. All right, start at home base. Relax those hands. And don't be afraid on volume. You've got room to go here.
So, ready? So continuing on.
All right, I'm jumping right in from the beginning. No so at the
Yes.
beginning of the sentence. Nix the non-words.
Continuing on the purpose for why I thought I needed executive presence training, there are 2 reasons why I thought it was important for me. One is a person that Lisa and I both know, Bob O'Brien. When you look at a person who exudes executive presence, Bob is that individual. He commands a room just by the way he uses.
All right, jumping in with Rich.
Yeah.
I love that you've nixed the non-words. Now pause even longer in between your sentences.
Okay.
They're clean. Let us absorb each one. Just 1 or 2 seconds.
The second reason, which was kind of a surprise to me, I said kind of, I shouldn't have,
Good catch.
was the fact that we're going to focus on our online presence. I fail at my online presence right now. I have a LinkedIn account. That's about as far.
Same feedback. Pause
Pause.
even longer.
Okay. I fail at using LinkedIn. I have an account. I put my bio on the account, and that's all I've ever done with it. Okay? Good?
Keep going. That's my signal to pause.
When are you going to let me off camera is my next question.
All right, 2 more sentences.
Okay.
I want to push you here. The non-words are non-issue with you right now. I want you to do a pause that feels too long and a volume that feels too loud. 2 sentences.
So I've been
Let's
fortunate.
start from the top without
God,
the so.
so get out of there. I have been very fortunate to be quoted in a number of trade magazines. I've written articles. I've published things both for Deloitte and for other publications. But you won't see any of that on my LinkedIn profile. So I'm really excited to use this as an opportunity to improve my online presence as well as my verbal and vocal presence.
I'm pushing you here.
Okay.
Tell me that same exact thing in sentences half the length.
Okay.
And really commit to that period at the end.
So building on
Nixing the so.
my 2 objectives, I'm looking for my online LinkedIn profile to be much more powerful after this session. Did need that. And then also, I'm looking for the ability to command a room when I have a presentation or I have a speaking role in any sort of.
you're going to hear the volume change on here. Such a difference. Much more confident in front of the group, much more assertive, much more polished. I like how it's coming across. There is room to pause even longer. Where it's going to sneak up with you, Rich, is shortening your sentences. You've got the non-words gone. They've taken a hike. You can pause longer and even shorten your sentences. Say more with less. Your and also and as well as and those type of things are making your sentences so long you start to lose us. Just think in bullet points. Nice, thank you. Thanks for letting me push you.
As I mentioned at the beginning, just remember.
You took the
This
words
is
right
tough.
off.
Aetna has been my main client for the past 4 years. I'm actually at a transition point in my career, so.
Let's start that sentence again without actually. I'm at a transition point.
Aetna has been my main client for the past 4 years. I'm currently at a transition point, meaning I still have a book of business at Aetna, but will now be focusing some business development time at a more local-based account. It's both exciting for me, but also a little nervous. 4 years at one account where I have very established relationships. There's a comfort there and a familiarity. But it's also
Checking in with Sean, you are going to be shocked when you watch your intro compared to this. Your non-words right now are gone. It completely changes how you come across in terms of confidence, assertiveness, polish. Now let's drive the volume up. Big deep breath, really project, blow us away.
focusing on business development activities going forward is also really exciting.
Even louder, Sean. Even louder.
It's really exciting for me. It's something I think I'm actually very good at, but haven't had a lot of opportunity to actually focus doing. Going forward, I also am looking forward to spending more time in Chicago and more time at home with my children in the evenings.
Last two sentences, looking forward to spending more time in Chicago. And then about the kids. Period, pause.
I'm excited about spending more time in Chicago, getting to know the community more and the community I live in, and also being able to spend more time in
Two sentences, period and a pause in between.
Okay.
I'm looking forward to, period, pause. I'm also anxiously anticipating more time with my kids.
Okay.
Something that separates those two thoughts out. Sentences are really long, let's
Okay.
make two short ones instead of one big long.
I'm really excited about spending more time in Chicago and also being able to spend more time with my children.
One more time,
So-
two sentences. You're doing and also.
Oh, okay.
You're traveling to a new set of eyes. Finish a sentence, period, pause,
Okay.
second sentence about the kids.
I'm also, I'm looking forward to spending more time in Chicago, hopefully spending more time with my children as well.
Better,
Okay.
better.
I feel like I need.
It's good. You are really going to be surprised at the difference between earlier this morning and now with the non-words. It's perhaps one of the biggest changes I've seen in you yet. I mean, it's really, really impressive. Nice job. Nice job. Plenty of room to go on volume, Sean. Plenty of room to go. Don't be afraid to really work the volume. It's got a lot of ground to cover before it reaches these ears. Just send it out there. Lots of power behind it.
Great. Let me talk to you guys about pausing. I've been asked to focus on pausing because I continue to use some of the fillers, especially the filler called and. I tried my best. When I was going through the on-deck process, I practiced for 1 year. I did phenomenally well when I presented to the technology leadership. They even walked out of the room and told me about it. But I think I'm back into the same group where I was comfortable with. I continue to use some of these fillers as in when It helps me. Sometimes when I come to trainings like this, that's when I realize I need to stop using it.
Great display of the use of the sauce. Nicely done. Watch when we play this back, how short Srini keeps his sentences. That's really the key here. Not just pausing when you reach the end of your really long sentence, but also shortening what could be, breaking up one sentence into what could be two. Helps us absorb. All right.
So you're telling me I'm coachable.
You are coachable, that's exactly right. All right, Vic.
Good morning, everyone. I'm going to talk to you about one of my other passions, which is travel. Growing up, my father had a transferable job. As a result of that, I traveled with him and lived in various countries. We were 4 years in Saudi Arabia, Jeddah and Riyadh. We lived in the UK for 4 years. And I was also fortunate to travel to South Korea. Outside of that, I've also had the pleasure of traveling to other countries. Traveled quite a bit in Europe, traveled to Canada as well. If you have not been there, I would strongly recommend going to British Columbia, Vancouver, Victoria. It is probably one of the most breathtaking places.
All right, feedback for Vic. Thoughts?
Very good.
Done. Nicely done. You will also notice, he was starting on that eye connection piece that I segued into. You'll spend much more time on that this afternoon. Notice how he was staying with each person for one sentence, and then moving to a new set, and then moving. Really effective. Nicely done. Nicely done. And Rick.
What are we doing?
Give me a minute on the topic of your choice, pausing at the end of every sentence, no non-words. So, and so, basically, actually, which are words but fillers. No non-words, no fillers. Find the period at the end of your sentence and give me a nice long pause after every sentence.
Okay. Well, I'll follow on with what Vic just did and talk a little bit about my journeys in life, although not to.
All right, I'm going to jump in right off the bat.
Yeah.
2 things, hands down.
Yeah.
Up 5 levels on volume.
Okay.
Blow us out of the water on volume.
Okay. All right, so I'm going to follow on to what Vic just did and talk a little bit about my journeys in life and where I traveled as a kid. And they weren't places as cool as Saudi Arabia or the UK. I started life in.
All right, so here's what we're eliminating.
Yeah.
And I started
Okay,
life
okay,
with the
okay.
just pause. The shorter your sentence, the easier this will be. Keep
Yeah.
your sentences really short.
Started life in Biddeford, Maine, moved to central Massachusetts. When I was a teenager, moved to Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania.
Are you catching the Your beginning of each sentence, as you're thinking, is and then you lead in. Start the sentence clean, that first word.
Moved to Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania as a teenager and lived there for about 20 years. Then got a chance to continue moving to garden spots like Cleveland, Ohio for 6 years, and now to Cincinnati, Ohio for 7 years. So I've had a tour.
Did you catch that?
So,
All right. I had to start right with the word I. 2 sentences,
Yeah,
long pause in between,
yeah.
no fillers.
I've had a chance to see a lot of the Rust Belt.
Did you hear the
Yeah, I did. Right away. I've had a chance to have a tour of the Rust Belt over the last 20 years, 30 years of my life.
Are you hearing the in there?
Yeah.
It's your thinking word. It's your thinking sound. Give me a super short sentence, one super short sentence. Loud as you can, no filler.
I live in Cincinnati, Ohio.
There's one. I like it. I like it.
So Stacy, do you find that you still practice these concepts, or does it just come naturally now? Is this something you keep working
It's
on?
Sarah.
Or-
But
okay.
I will claim the name Stacy all day long. It comes with a lot of practice where it eventually becomes habit. Initially, when we learned all of this with the onboarding, as much as we spent time in training to go relearn all of it, we were feeling much like you were. Even though a lot of it was in our past, it still feels new and like you have to revisit it. It doesn't take long. If you incorporate it on a daily basis, pick and choose the skills that you want to focus on each and every day, they eventually become habit. Don't even have to think about them anymore. Let's watch what pause, volume, and inflection looks like as it progresses.
One of the reasons I moved to Chicago was to serve a client, Heitman, is a real estate investment advisor, and I transferred here, and after 2 years, after working on it for only 2 years, I was asked to go on to another client, totally different industry. Huge disappointment. But fast forward, 11 years after serving that client, so fast forward, after 11 years, I actually went back on to Heitman as a partner versus a manager. I took that client from around $250,000 in fees to over $4 million in fees over the past 8 years.
Right, good morning, everyone. I'm going to be talking about my client, Lasers, and Deloitte's footprint there for the last 2 or 3 years. I started with Lasers 3 years ago, in December. They are about $4 billion alcohol distributor. They are the third largest alcohol distributor in the United States. When we first started with them, we wanted to engage. When we first started with Lasers, our engagement was about $6.5 million worth of a blueprint project for leading to SAP implementation. Following that, we won the implementation phase of the project, which was about $90 million. Today, at Lasers, we have done about $42 million in the past 2.5 years. And we've done $42 million over the past 3 years. Our footprint has grown beyond technology. We do a lot of SNO work now, which is strategy and operations work. We also have,
So one of my numbers times nowadays is actually, I come to Chicago very often to visit this client. I enjoy it a lot because Chicago is memories to me, and I love to practice here. I love working with people, and I enjoy spending time in the city as well. So it's another good thing about this client is around the world. Actually, guess where? In France. So it's a project. I'm working with them on a project right now. It should be a large project. It should take us to a lot of work in France as well as in Chicago. So that should be a very interesting project. Not only because serving these clients is actually sometimes a challenge. The reason for that is they have two, I would say, quoting my sorry. Okay. Serving these clients is sometimes a challenge. The reason for that is they have two teams, one in Chicago and another one in Paris.
Ready? So continuing
Nice and
on the purpose for why I thought I needed executive presence training.
there are two reasons why I thought it was important for me. One is a person that Lisa and I both know, Bob O'Brien. When you look at a person who exudes executive presence, Bob is that individual. He commands a room just by the second reason, which was kind of a surprise to me, I said kind of, I shouldn't have,
Good catch.
was the fact that we're going to focus on our online presence. I fail at my online presence right now. I have a LinkedIn account at using LinkedIn. I have an account, I put my bio in the account, and that's all I've ever done with it. Okay.
Keep going. That's my signal to pause.
When are you going to let me off camera is my next question. So I have been very fortunate to be quoted in a number of trade magazines. I've written articles, I've published things both for Deloitte and for other publications. But you won't see any of that on my LinkedIn profile. So I'm really excited to use this as an opportunity to improve my online presence as well as my verbal and vocal presence. So building the two objectives, I'm looking for my online LinkedIn profile to be much more powerful after this session than that. And then also, I'm looking for the ability to command a room when I have a presentation or I have a speaking role in any sort of.
As I mentioned at the beginning, has been my main client for the past 4 years. And actually at a transition point in my career, Aetna has been my main client for the past 4 years. I'm currently at a transition point, meaning I still have a book of business at Aetna, but will now be focusing some business development time at a more local-based account. It's both exciting for me, but also a little nervous. 4 years at one account where I have very established relationships, there's a comfort there and familiarity. Focusing on business development activities going forward